Well, hello everyone. Good to see you all. Maybe not literally. Just a few days ago, I got a word from my manager that the electricity in my building is going to be turned off Sunday morning for several hours. So that would mean no electricity, no air conditioning, no internet, and didn't want to go out in the middle of the sermon. So I told Donald and just said that I'll go ahead and do the sermon the night before, and I'll send you all the video of it. And since there'll be no electricity, no air conditioner, I'll be out somewhere. I'll be out somewhere staying cool and hopefully staying out of trouble. But good to be with you all again today at AIT, and look forward to seeing everyone up at AIT soon. When we have social events, we like to start with icebreakers just so everyone can get to know everyone. We'll have a question, go around and answer. And usually the question that, like, one of the questions is, well, if you could have any job you wanted, what would that be? My answer's been the same for a long time. 747 captain. Well, as you know, I'm not a 747 captain, but I've had many wonderful experiences on 747s. As a passenger, watching sunrise from the cockpit over the Pacific, even sitting in the cockpit for takeoff and landing, um, flying a 747 simulator, and making the difficult landing at Hong Kong, the old airport, Kai Tak, one of the most difficult in the world. And I have lots of stories I can tell you about my journeys, and maybe I will at our church camp. We're sitting around the campfire after the snipe hunt. Now, to be a pilot, good eyesight is essential. When I was in college, I applied for U.S. Air Force ROTC, which they would pay my tuition and other fees, and I would train to be a pilot and give the Air Force several years of service after I got my wings. And when I was getting ready for this, just the officer I spoke to said that I'd take some written tests and the physical. And the physical will be pretty extensive. The one thing you're going to look most closely at is the eyes. I mean, they'll check my visual acuity and depth perception. They'll dilate my eyes. I did fine with those. I flunked the written test. When I was in dental school, I was 36 years old. And some of these professions, dentistry, surgery, jewelry, they all require good hand skills and good eyesight, especially for close up. And many times you see these people wearing magnifying glasses when they work. And when I was in dental school, I would use a magnifying glass just to check my work before I turned it in. And, I remember talking to some of the other doctors and one of them said, why don't you just go and get yourself some magnifiers? Someone had an eye exam, and the doctor said that my eyes were okay. If I want magnifying glasses, the only problem is that you'll probably be dependent on them, and so just kind of don't get them if you don't need to. Well, anyway, I didn't get them, but a few years later, I was studying my Hebrew, and I was in seminary, and I was just reading it, and all of a sudden, why are you just looking blurry? I'm a good reader. Why is it so blurry? Well, I was 41 years old, and then I remembered what I learned, that when we turn 40, the eyes often lose ability to accommodate. As a result, we get farsighted. We can't see things close up. We can see them in the distance, but like for reading anything close up, we need to have glasses. And I went to an eye doctor and I had an exam. This doctor's a Christian, and he made sure that every patient heard the gospel. How did he do it? You know how they put up eye charts? Have you read the letters? He had the whole gospel spelled out and said every patient comes in here, here's the gospel. And he had patients who came to faith as a result of reading the gospel. There were also a few that didn't appreciate it. And still throw glasses for reading and close-up work. And now I have to have good light when I read. If it's too dark, it's hard to read. This happens to most of us when we turn 40, that we have a problem with farsightedness. So it's not uncommon, but there's another problem that's even greater, and that's nearsightedness. And nearsightedness, you can't see things in the distance. You can only see things that are up close. And so, oftentimes you're going to need glasses, like especially for driving, when you can't see things in the distance. And so the way to correct both nearsightedness and farsightedness is you get glasses. And you see, in the spiritual life, we often have a problem with being nearsighted. Because you see, we can only see things that are close up. We can't see things in the distance. Yes, we know God is there. We know who he is. We know what he can do. We know what we'd like him to do, but he doesn't come through the way we wanted. We lose hope. We question him. We might even get angry with him. Well, God, you're a loving heavenly Father. You want the best for us. Why are you doing this to me? And I think probably all of us recall the events of September 11th, 2001. And I also remember the events of April 1995. I was working at a temporary job in, it was a large telecommunications company in Dallas. And I was in the lounge on my break. And I was watching the O.J. Simpson trial. That was the big highlight at the time. You all know who O.J. Simpson was. He was a well-known football running back, and he was on trial for murder. Trial went on for several months. It was pretty boring. But I was watching on the big screen TV, and they interrupted to announce that in Oklahoma City, there was an explosion outside the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. And it was a pretty massive explosion. They had no information at that time other than it just blew off the entire face of the building. They couldn't tell how many were inside, how many died, and how many injuries. Well, as the events unfolded and I looked at the security cameras, there had been a van parked right in front of the building. And it turned out that van was filled with fertilizer and ammonium nitrate. It was a bomb. And it exploded in front of the building, killing 168 people and injuring over 600. Well, from the pictures, they got the license number of the van. They were able to trace it, where it was rented, who it was rented to, and ultimately they were able to find and apprehend the man responsible, Timothy McVeigh. He did it as a protest against the U.S. government. What's interesting is he showed no expression, no signs of remorse, but it was his way of getting back at the government. Well, he was tried, and he was convicted and put to death. And the following week, Billy Graham held a memorial service in Oklahoma City. And, of course, he addressed the question, where is God when these things happen? Why do these things happen? Why does he let them happen? It's the same question we ask today. Why do these things happen? And unfortunately, I don't have an answer, but as we look at Habakkuk, the prophet, we're going to get some further insight and see the cure for spiritual nearsightedness. Now, just to refresh you, the prophet Habakkuk, he was a prophet in the southern kingdom of Judah. Remember, the kingdom had been divided. The northern kingdom had been taken into Assyrian captivity in 728 BC. In the southern kingdom, this is probably maybe around 605 BC, give or take. And Josiah had been king. He was a good king, and he had initiated many reforms. But if you study the history of Israel, most of the kings were wicked. And a couple kings down, Jehoiakim was a wicked king. There was lots of corruption. He was ungodly. He was rebellious. There was much violence, greed, decay, fighting perverted justice, as I read about Judah. Habakkuk cried out to God, "Why aren't you doing anything about this?" God appeared to be indifferent. Now, have you ever experienced that in your own life? God appears to be indifferent. He knows what you're going through, but he's not doing anything. He just appears indifferent. I remember an elder at my church several years ago. He would always say, "See what God can do." And I was going through a really difficult time once, and I said, "Don't give me this see what God can do. He's not doing anything." And I'm sure most of us can probably relate to that. Probably all of us can, when it appears God's doing nothing. He's indifferent. And we make the mistake of taking things into our own hands. We're spiritually nearsighted. We can only see what's up close. We're not the first ones to do it. Remember in Exodus 32, Moses was on Mount Sinai receiving the law from God. He had been gone longer than anticipated. The people were getting restless, and they told Aaron, "We don't know what became of this Moses. Make us a god we can all see and worship." They made the golden calf. I think we all know what happened after that. And you see, we make golden calves in our own lives when God doesn't act, or when he doesn't do what we want him to do. Habakkuk didn't do that. Now, what's different about Habakkuk is we don't see him prophesying to a specific people like the other prophets, but we see him dialoguing with God. "How long, O Lord? How long until you answer? Why are you being indifferent to my cries?" And, look what's going around. Violence, iniquity, wickedness, destruction, strife, contention. The law is ignored, justice is never upheld. Wicked surround the righteous, and justice is perverted. God, why aren't you doing something? Why aren't you judging these people? Well, God answers. "Oh, yeah, look what I'm going to do. I'm going to send in the Chaldeans." The Chaldeans? Are you nuts or something? You know who these people are? You know how wicked they are? It would be like if they sent in the North Koreans to govern our country. That would be no fun. And these are wicked people, and God is going to send them in to judge Judah. In other words, he's using wicked people to judge more righteous, and that makes no sense at all. And Habakkuk responds to God, and we'll see God's answer. We sing, "This is amazing grace." Well, this isn't amazing grace, because God, you're not making any sense. What you're doing. We're going to look at Habakkuk chapter 1, verse 12, up to Habakkuk 2, verse 4. And let's read together. "Are you not from everlasting, O Lord my God, my Holy One? We will not die. You, O Lord, have appointed them to judge, and you, O Lord, have established them to correct. And you, O Rock, have established them to correct. Your eyes are too pure to approve evil, and you cannot look on wickedness with favor. Why do you look with favor on those who deal treacherously? Why are you silent when the wicked swallow up those more righteous than they? Why have you made men like the fish of the sea, like creeping things without a ruler over them? The Chaldeans bring all of them up with a hook drag them away on their net, and gather them together in their fishing net. Therefore they rejoice and are glad. Therefore they offer a sacrifice to their net and burn incense to their fishing net. Because through these things their catch is large and their food is plentiful, will they therefore empty their net and continually slay nations without sparing? I will stand on my guard post, station myself on the rampart, and I will keep watch to see what he will speak to me, and how I may reply when I am reproved. Then the Lord answered me. He said, record the vision and inscribe it on the tablets, that the one who reads it may run, for the vision is yet for the appointed time. It hastens toward the goal, and it will not fall. Though it tarries, wait for it will certainly come, it will not delay. Behold, as for the proud one, his soul is not right within him, but the righteous will live by his faith. And we're going to see Habakkuk's response to what God is about to do, and then we will see God respond back to Habakkuk with his vision of what he will do. Now, first thing I want us to see is in verses 12 through 17. This isn't amazing grace, because, Habakkuk knows who God is. We do too. Look at verses 12 or 13. God is eternal. He's the Holy One. He's holy. He's set apart. He will preserve his people. He is the rock. The rock is strength, stability, and God, he cannot approve evil. He can't look on wickedness with favor. You see? This is who God is. Well, the question is, why is he doing this? God, why are you doing this? Look at all these questions. God, you made a covenant with Abraham. You made several covenants. And you promised that a ruler would one day sit on the throne of David and rule over the house of Israel. And you promised a kingdom that will last forever. This is what you promised us. To go back on them would be unthinkable. This isn't amazing grace. You see, like Habakkuk, when we see things like this and God doesn't appear to be responding, it's when we get nearsighted and we get like Habakkuk, we question God. I remember a man several years ago that his wife left him for another man and divorced him. And, I don't know all the details. I know that he tried to be the best husband that he could to his wife. And, I don't know all the reasons why she left him, but it appeared that reconciliation was not going to happen. And that's a hard one, because first of all, divorce is not God's will. You take your wedding vows, it's till death do you part, not divorce. So how can God allow this and not do anything? Sexual sin outside of marriage, that's adultery. In the Old Testament, you'd be stoned to death. So why isn't God doing anything? And this man, he held on to God through it all. He did everything that he could do. Many of us prayed for him and his wife. And I don't know whatever happened. I remember talking to a friend, and he was telling me that this man, this is an excellent example of one who's not spiritually nearsighted. This is a man who sees the forest for the trees. And, something like this, it's hard to see that happen, because we know that's not God's ideal will. But it happens. Living in a fallen world, it happens. You probably all remember that 3 years ago I had surgery to remove a cancerous mass from my left kidney. And the doctors were able to get all the cancer, and I was pronounced cancer-free. And, as I shared it on my Facebook, people were praising God, how good he is. Well, what if the doctor said, you have stage 4 cancer, and you have less than a year to live. Does that mean God, can you still say God is good? Does it mean that he's any less good? You see, the problem that Habakkuk had is a problem that we have, spiritual nearsightedness. To put it properly terms, why does a good and loving God allow evil to persist? It doesn't make sense. It's totally against God's nature. He doesn't do anything about it. He's indifferent. Why? And that's a hard one to swallow. In my country, and you probably know that abortion is legal. Abortion is the termination of a pregnancy before birth. It has been legal for 49 years since the United States Supreme Court ruled that it was legal. Now, if you talk to Jews, many Jews still have distinct and painful memories of the Holocaust, when 6 million Jews were slaughtered under the regime of Adolf Hitler. And they still get emotional about it. Multiply that by 10, because since 1973, 60 million babies have been aborted. Now, a woman will say, look, it's my body. I can do what I want with it. It's my choice. But you see, another human being growing inside her body. Each of us, at one time, we were a human being growing inside our mother's body. I remember President Reagan saying on national TV, abortion is murder. But it still happens today. It's still going on. Now, there is a case before the Supreme Court. They've listened to it. And in June, they will make their ruling. With a conservative majority on the court, it's possible that the decision, Roe versus Wade, allowing abortion, could be overturned. But, when we have elections, we want a candidate who's going to uphold our Christian values. We want a pro-life president. But, I can't understand how God would have a pro-choice president in office. How could he do that? Well, how can that be God's will? I don't know. You see, we just see the evil going on. We don't understand it. God is indifferent. He's not doing anything, and we ask why. Now, last time I gave you a theological term, theodicy. Theodicy is a defense of God, even in the appearance of evil. And that's what Habakkuk is about. We're going to see it all through this book, so stay with me, please. Because in these verses, 13 up through 17, God is going to be reminding, Habakkuk's going to remind God who these people are. They're people of iniquity, injustice, idolatry. God is using them to judge the people. He's using evil people to judge righteous people. Habakkuk has piercing questions for God. Even when he understands who God is. This doesn't make sense. This is not amazing grace. I don't think there's anyone here who has not been inconvenienced and affected by the evil going on in society. We experience losses, financial, loved ones, might lose our possessions, the things that give us meaning to life. And Habakkuk, he likens the Chaldeans to fishermen, starting in verse 14 through 17. Have any of you ever been deep-sea fishing? I only did it once when I was 8 years old. And we're living in Maryland, and we went fishing in the Chesapeake Bay, which empties into the Atlantic Ocean. And it was a lot of fun. We chartered a boat and went out. And we went fishing. Now, fish, they have the whole ocean themselves. They can go wherever they want. They're free. But you catch a fish, it's a different story. Because once they bite on that hook, they are powerless to do anything. And so you haul it in, and a fish out of water, it means death. Because God made fish to survive in the water, just as he made us to survive out of the water. You leave the fish out of water too long, it'll die. You stay underwater too long, you'll drown. And we did is we caught the fish, and we had a large barrel we put them in. And so that evening we finished our catch, and pretty much fish had all died. We were all counting them. I don't remember exactly how many fish we caught. I think it was over 120 something. But we had so much fun counting them. One gushy little fish, two gushy little fish, 30 gushy little fish, 50 gushy little fish, 100 gushy little fish, 120 gushy little fish. We had fun. It was time of celebration. And we divided them up so everyone would get their own share to take home and fry and eat them for dinner. It was fun. And you see, these Chaldeans, they're like fishermen. Look at these verses. Because you see, they're going to swallow their victims. They see their victims like fish to swallow up. And, they'll catch them, they'll bring them up, they'll put them in the net, drag them away. Verse 15, they rejoice and are glad. It's a time of celebration. Just like we were counting all the gushy little fish. It's a time of celebration. And they make sacrifices to their net. They burn incense. Kind of sounds like idolatry. The Chaldeans' God is not our God. Them, it's probably power, possessions, getting what they want, their fishing nets. But you see, it lasts too long if we look in verses 16 and 17. Because eventually, the fish will all be gone. So, gotta go back under the water. Let's go catch some more. Let's bring up some more gushy little fish. We're not going to spare them. We're going to catch them, take them in, and we're going to celebrate. That's how the Chaldeans were. They weren't going to spare God's people. Now, let me just say that this was not a complete destruction of God's people, but they were an instrument of judgment. And keep that in mind as we continue in Habakkuk. You see, God is doing something. It's something that makes no sense to Habakkuk. It doesn't make any sense to us. It's against his character. It's evil. This isn't amazing grace. God's using evil to judge righteousness. Doesn't make any sense. I can't blame Habakkuk's questions. A little bit nearsighted. If you're between a rock and a hard place, it's easy to lose hope. You get nearsighted, you don't see the forest of the trees. We cry out to God, wanting him to intervene. And he doesn't. He appears indifferent. He's our only hope. But he's not doing anything. Well, the only answer is watching and waiting by faith. That is amazing grace. Let's look at chapter 2, verses 1 through 4. God's answer. Because that's amazing grace. Now, remember last time I said that I entitled this series, All Along the Watchtower. And when I say that, I'm not referring to a song by Jimi Hendrix, and I'm not referring to a cult that'll come to your door and they're going to take you all through the Bible trying to show you that Jesus isn't God. No, I'm referring to an attitude of expectancy. Habakkuk is expecting. He's keeping watch. He's waiting for God's answer. He's waiting for God's intervention. And we do that too. Now, I remember when I was in the Navy and I was sent aboard ship. And in the Navy, we all stand watches. And when you're on watch, you have to be alert. It's not a time to sleep or talk with your shipmates. You got to keep watch. You're responsible. Something happens on your watch, and you may find yourself in front of your commanding officer. And we all stood watch. Um, in the Navy, it was common to play pranks on new sailors. And one of the pranks we like to play is called the mail buoy watch. And what we do is we take the new sailor, usually we do it when we were in port or we were anchored out, and we take the sailor, we go to the back of the ship and say, now, and we give him some equipment. They say, and we give him some sound powered phones so he could talk to the people on the bridge. We say, okay, your job is to look for the mail buoy. It's orange and white. And you see, when you see it, it means the mail has been delivered. And so when you see it, you need to call the officer of the deck because he'll send someone out there in their boat to get the mail and bring it. I mean, you want your mail, don't you? So you've got to look for that mail buoy. It's orange and white. When you see it, you call us and tell us, and we'll go ahead and take care of it. Well, we leave him there, and about an hour later, we come back and check on him. How's it coming? We haven't heard anything from you. I can't see anything out there. Say, well, what do you mean you can't see it? Right there it is. There it is. It's orange and white. It's right there. You just got to keep looking. It's there. Well, it's even more fun when the sailor realizes that we were just playing a prank on him, and there is no such thing as a mail buoy. But see, he's out there. He's watching and he's waiting. He knows what he's looking for. It's not a leap into the darkness. And Habakkuk is waiting. He's watching and waiting. He's on the watchtower. He's waiting for God's response. Now, God's answer may not be the answer we're looking for. It may be completely contrary. But remember, when we're spiritually nearsighted, God is not. May not appear amazing grace to us, but when we put on our glasses and we look back, it is amazing grace. And in verses 2 and 3, God gives Habakkuk a vision. Now, we don't know what specifically is in this vision. He just told Habakkuk that you need to write it down on tablets. Whoever reads it needs to run with it. And you need to run with it. God's going to do what he's promised he's going to do at the proper time. Now, we may not see it. It might delay, but wait for it. When it comes to pass, it'll come to pass without delay. Look at verses 2 and 3. See, remember the parable of the widow and the unjust judge in Luke 18? The widow, she came to the judge who was unrighteous. She wanted him to give her protection from her adversary, and he wouldn't give it to her. She kept coming to him. And he finally said that this woman, I don't fear God, I don't respect man, but if she keeps coming, she's going to wear me out, give me a black eye. So I'm going to grant her justice. And she does. And as Jesus said, if the unrighteous judge will respond to the pleas of his people, how much more will God respond to those who cry out to him? He will bring about justice speedily, without delay. When he does it, he'll do it. But remember, it's the appointed time. It will come to pass. You may or may not see it, but it will happen at God's appointed time. Wait for it. You see, God's timing is usually not our timing. Does that sound familiar? We try to take things into our hands, hammer down doors, we ride roughshed, forcing them open, and then we brag about, yeah, this is amazing grace, look what God did. Well, God didn't do anything at all. You were in the way of what he wanted to do. You see, when God does something, he does it. You won't need to do anything. Except, like my friend said, see what God can do. Sit back, watch it happen. He'll clear the way before you. He'll let you go forward. I think about my time in the doctoral program. I don't know if I told you this, but I got rejected 4 times for that program before I got accepted. When the time came I got in, God provided the funds in unexpected ways that I never even expected. And I was able to go through it in 4 years. And that wasn't it. It was a tough program. And I still have the flagella marks on my back from all the whippings I got after I preached. I'll show them to you next time I'm there. But you see, I was shown much grace in unexpected ways. And I got through that program in 4 years. And I didn't try to force it to happen, but God did it. And you see, that's how He works. And I can't tell you how He'll respond to your situation. I can only tell you that He will act at the appointed time without delay. You may or you may not see it, but when you let Him do His work, that is cause for celebration. That is amazing grace. Because you see, there's two kinds of people. Look with me in verse 4. There's the righteous and there's the unrighteous. For the unrighteous, this isn't amazing grace. For the righteous, it is. Now, this is very important because I'm going to close with verse 4. And my next sermon in Habakkuk, I'm going to start with verse 4. Because there's two groups of people in here. There's the unrighteous, the proud. And the proud person is not right with God. You know, pride is the opposite of humility, comes before a fall. It's the biggest obstacle to receiving God's blessings. I mean, you share the gospel with a lost person, and you know that they are lost and they're desperately in need of salvation. But they refuse to humble themselves and accept God's offer of forgiveness. They want to do it their way. But the righteous will live by faith. And the only cure for spiritual nearsightedness is faith. The Christian life is a life of faith. It's not a life of sight. 2 Corinthians 5, Paul said, we walk by faith, not by sight. Don't believe me? Well, you probably have an agenda for tomorrow. And you've got things that you need to do. Do you know now with 100% certainty that you're going to get to accomplish everything you're purposed to do? Do you know for sure that nothing unexpected is going to happen? Do you know for sure that you'll still be here tomorrow at this time? What if the Lord comes back today? Or what if you're riding the BTS, it derails, everyone gets killed? What if you're trying to cross Ramkong Hang or Lat Prao, you get run over a bus? First thing I'd ask is, what are you doing trying to cross that street? What if you have a massive heart attack tonight? We don't know. But God knows, and we have to trust Him. He doesn't give us a detailed step-by-step plan in His Word of what to do. If He did, the Bible would probably be as exciting as a telephone book. The righteous man will live by faith. See, people believe this, and I've been asked this before. You know, people actually believe that in the Old Testament, men were right before God by works of the law. In the New Testament, it was by faith in Christ. Well, no, it was all by faith. It's always been by faith. Don't believe me? Go back to Abraham. Look at the Old Testament saints. Go to Hebrews 11. Read the Great Faith Hall of Fame. Because you see, all of these people, they had the same common denominator. It was by faith. And faith is not believing that everything you want's going to happen. It's not a force of positive confession, which you can speak whatever you want into existence, and if it doesn't happen, it's lack of faith. It's none of those. I like the way my pastor said, faith is believing that God will do what He has promised to do in His Word. And you see, all mankind is moving towards a culmination of God's plan. He will bring about absolute peace, unrighteousness, and justice. He'll do it, but He'll do it in His time. He'll do it His way, and when He does it, He'll do it speedily, without delay. The righteous man shall live by faith. Does that sound familiar to you? It should, because we saw Paul use it in Galatians. In Galatians, Paul explained that we are not justified by works of the law, but by faith. In Romans, it was enough for Martin Luther to say, that's enough with the indulgences. You're not going to buy your way out of purgatory and into heaven. It's by faith. Came the Reformation. And the writer of Hebrews, that it's the only way to please God, by faith. You see, all of us suffer from spiritual nearsightedness. Now we may be reasonably certain of what God's will for us is, but we have decisions to make. We don't know the exact steps that we should take, and we want God's will. Remember a few weeks ago I shared about making decisions in the light of God's will, and I understand that Bob Goffling has been sharing from Proverbs about making decisions. We get afraid of making the wrong decisions, so we're paralyzed, don't do anything. And how do we make decisions? By faith. We make the best decision that we can with what we have, and we step out in faith. We trust God that He's working out His plan in our lives. In Philippians, He tells the Philippian believers, God is at work in you, both to will and to work for His good pleasure. Work out your salvation, not work for it, work out. He's working in you, and He's going to give you the ability and desire to carry it out. And you see, when you do that, you can step out in faith. You can trust God that He is in control, and whatever happens is His will. It's all by faith. We may not like the idea that God is sovereign, He's in control, that He rules the universe, but that's what His word said. Trust me, you don't want me running this universe. And if it was up to you to run it, do you think you could do it? No, it's all by faith. And you see, that's the key to spiritual nearsightedness. It's the righteous man shall live by faith. That, my friends, is amazing grace. And we're going to see that as we continue in Habakkuk. Now, you've heard us talk about the righteous man shall live by faith. Remember, we were in Galatians. The false teachers told the believers that it's not enough to believe in Jesus. You got to get circumcised as well. It's faith plus works. And you see, anything that adds to or subtracts from the finished work of Christ, that's another gospel. Another gospel is no gospel at all. You may be here today and you're not sure of it if you're right with God. You're not sure if He sees you as righteous or not. Well, you can know by faith. It's by faith in believing the gospel message. Christ died for our sins. He was buried, rose again the third day. And that's the gospel message. That is the only way that we can be right with God, through faith. That is amazing grace.